now that the game goes to win and lose, we need to be able to get off of those. It's fairly straightforward in that we can recycle similar to what we have with the start game screen. Put some text on screen, and then we look for the mouse pressed. So I'm going to copy all of this, paste it on screen, and then just change the words around, and then we change and decide, do we want to go back to the start screen, or do we want to just be able to play again right away? So with that, I will just copy what's there. Now if I go into win, we'll take care of our winner first. And with this, I will be positive. Great job. That was so difficult. And let's see. And you should be proud. Okay, so maybe I'm not being entirely positive with my player, but that's okay. Now we can change the go left to win, go right to lose, and modify this a little bit and perhaps say play again. To bump that down. Now with this, we could put in text that says click anywhere to play again, but we also have the option that we could set it up where we define an actual area that we want the player to have to press. In essence, we could create a button. So we could create an area that we want them to have to click on that looks like an actual screen button. Instead of just click anywhere, we can build that button. But right now we'll just leave it that if they click anywhere it can play, so we can at least kind of keep cycling through this. The next question is our game state. Under playing again, do we immediately go into playing over, or do we want to rotate all or kind of migrate all the way back to start, and we pull up the start screen, which then allows them to then go from the start screen to play the game. So we have both options. Right now I'll leave it at play so we have one less click in the process. We'll run, click anywhere to play. So if I go left, I win. We get the text, great job. Now I bumped it down 40. Looks like I need to push play it again down even further because the text is almost touching and visually it looks like junk. So it should be dropped down. But now what I want to do is to find an area, a visual area that I want the user to click on. And I can even put the word play in it and make it look kind of button-esque as part of it. When we start adding graphics to our programs, we can actually define and create graphics in image programs and bring in those images for our buttons so that they look even more like an actual button. But right now, bump this down 50, so that'd be about 10 pixels further down. So instead of just pressing the mouse here, we also want to find out, will the mouse be where our button is? But we need to draw that button and put that on screen. So to begin that process, just put a comment in for what's going to happen next, and that is we are going to draw the button on screen. To put the button on screen, first I want to specify the fill color for this object, and with that we can choose any color that I want. Just going to choose a light gray. So it shows up, but it's not overly obnoxious. And then we need to define where that rectangle is going to be on screen for the button. So I'm using a rect for my button. I could also use an ellipse for my button. That would work as well. I wanted a round, kind of arcade style button. For now, I'm going to just do a rectangular button. So I have to think about where I want this on screen, and also how big I want it to be on screen. So if I want it to be centered on the screen, so that's my width divided by 2, then if I subtract, let's say 50 from that, because I'm going to make a 100 pixel wide button, that's going to center that object on screen. And the height for this, we'll do height divided by 2, and now I need to drop it even further down than the 50, so we'll probably drop down the middle of the screen plus 80. And I'll make it 100 pixels wide and maybe 60 pixels tall. Now, the exact numbers and measurements that we use here require some trial and error to figure out what values are going to give you the best results. Let's just see what it looks like. Left to win, and there's my rectangle. That will be my button. It's probably bigger than what I need, but I could put some big text into that so that I could make it look even more button-like. So knowing that I'm going to do that, I'll choose a fill color. I'll just use obnoxious green. So it has that nice radioactive color on top of the gray background. Throw in a text size, maybe 36, so it's even bigger than what we've seen before. Then use the text command. I'm going to do play in all capital letters. And the tricky part now is figuring out exactly where we want it to be. Remembering that all of our text is set currently with text align center. I'm drawing this button in the center of my screen. So we know that's a value that we're working with. So we now can use that as our starting point, and we'll say width minus 50, so it's placed the same X as the button. Oh, no, it's just width divided by 2 because it's centered on screen. The button is, well, the button is drawing from its left corner. It's not drawing from its middle. It is possible that we can change our drawing mode. It's called rect mode, and then we could draw the objects so that they register from their center point. But when we're working with rectangular objects, and as we start adding in images and things like that, it's easier to just get used to drawing rectangular objects by their top left corner. So that's why I'm going to encourage us to continue doing that. Now I need to figure out where I want it to be over here for the height. So this is one where we'll have to, so it's height, and we'll just start out with a number. Let's go with 92 and see what that does. We can see that now that text is right here, so we need to push it a whole lot further down in to drop it in, into the box. So if that box is starting at 80, we need to get this one down even further. And it looks like maybe even drop down 122. And the reason that 122 worked is the text was drawing through its middle point when it was at 92. The text is set at a height of 36. So I was guessing I needed to move it down about 12 more, thinking that was the baseline, but it wasn't for the text, so we needed to push it down. 122 seems to have put it about in the middle. Now that green is really obnoxious looking on the gray, but it does give it an electric quality, so we'll leave it like that for now. So I can draw the button, but what I want to have happen is when I click the mouse, I only want it to change the game state to play if I click on the button itself. And to do that, we need to then figure out if the mouse is inside the button and I have pressed the mouse. So I am clicking inside the button. So to do that, to be inside this button, we want to find out, have I clicked the mouse? And this is where we're going to build a lengthy conditional, because we will say, and we need to find out if the mouse x is going to be greater than something. Now, left edge doesn't have a value yet. We're going to figure out what that is in just a little bit. I'm just going to write this out in kind of plain language and then go back and change it into code. And in doing this, it helps us to kind of better understand it. Now, we could set variables for the left edge, the top edge, the right edge, and bottom edge, and then do it that way. And then it would make our conditional look a little bit prettier than having what's going to ultimately appear here. But we can say, and just going to put these on separate lines so it's easier to, so it doesn't get so long. So if the mouse x is less than the right edge, and we're talking edges of this rectangle area that we're declaring our button. So what we don't have built into processing, I can't say, hey, draw me a button the size, and then it knows that that button is active and say, hey, tell me when I click on the button. So we have to create it from scratch. So that's what we're really doing here, is we're creating this rectangle to be and represent our visual button, and then we're checking, is the mouse in the area of the button when we go and click on it. Then we need to find out if the mouse y is greater than the top edge. And finally, our mouse y is less than the bottom edge. So if all of those items are correct, then, so we've clicked the mouse, and the mouse is greater than the left edge, less than the right edge, greater than the top edge, less than the bottom edge. That means our mouse is within the confines of that box. I am, because I like how this looks using these values here, I am going to set up some variables here, and I'll say left edge. So left edge, now these variables are going to be these will be the edges of the button. So left edge is going to be equal to, now if we look at the left edge, knowing that the rectangle draws itself from its left point here, that left edge is width divided by 2 minus 50. So that means right edge is going to be similar to the left edge, but it needs to add in the length of the object. So it's width divided by 2, and then it's minus 50 plus 100. So we can see that that works out to be simply plus 50. And then top edge is going to be the y value that we start drawing this box. So it'll be height divided by 2 plus 80. And bottom is going to be similar to that, where it's going to be the top edge plus the height of the object. So it's height divided by 2 plus 80 plus 60, so that's plus 140. So these are now the edges of our button. And then we find out if the mouse has been pressed while at the same time mouse is greater than left edge, less than right edge, greater than top, less than the bottom. So if we do that, then we can change our game state to play. And if we run it again, so left wins. I'm clicking round screen. Nothing's happening. Now I think I want to move play it again down so it's closer to the button. I might even just say again, since the button itself says play. But now if I go over the button and click, we can see it works. So now I have it set up that I can play my game with the ability to repeat it. The next step would be to repeat this process for losing, changing the message that we're putting on screen, and then putting a button on screen and working with that. Now you could copy paste the code, change some words around, change some color, but it should be the same kind of process. So I'm going to go and grab what I have under my win state and change and put that under lose and say, be less than, helpful here, you lost. Talent. Get rid of, again, this time because they lost with my button, I'm going to change the background color of the button and we'll make it darker so we can see there's a difference. So now we lost, play again, win, lose. And with that, I now successfully can play my game. I can win, and I can lose as we work our way through this process.